Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good day, good morning, good evening. I am Eric Shiraev, and we continue studying international relations. I am in my home office in Fairfax County, Virginia, United States. We have studied already a few basic definitions that relate to international relations. We now are more or less familiar with the history of international relations. Today and later on, we will study the views, the points of view that people in power, people in politics, people who make decisions, people who study international politics, those points of view that they developed on the international system. So they simply wanted to explain how the world works. And today we will start with a concept which is called realism, or realpolitik with a K in the end, very unusual spelling in English, but it's a German term. Or they often call this point of view as power politics. It will be self-explanatory. I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you a little bit about the history of development of this concept. We will apply then its assumptions to the events of the past, to the events of recent past, and maybe we'll think about the future. So this is my plan, our plan, and let's do it together. So this is the realist perspective, or point of view, or an approach, or viewpoint. So it's just a take on the world from one particular angle. I begin our lecture with statements, or just a statement made by one of the well-known philosophers who describe realism in my mind. He didn't describe realism, just he made the statement, but I think this statement is perfectly describes the nature of realism. The sad duty of politics is to establish justice in a sinful world. You may say, okay, just a phrase, but it reflects the nature of realism as a point of view, and the essence is there. Well, establish justice in a sinful world. Begin with the end, a sinful world. Realists, or those who support realism, believe that the world is not perfect. The world is imperfect. The world is sinful. We are angry. We are violent. We can trust. They can trust us. We take advantage of our interests. We take advantage of other people. So this is the world. It's a sad picture, right? However, justice is possible. What justice is, we will discuss it later, and in fact, debates should continue about what justice is. But we believe justice is, or the just world is a concept which stands for something right, something which you accept, something that's supposed to be. So good things prevail, bad things disappear from our life. There's just, well, you deserve what you worked hard for, and you deserve to get that. You deserve basic rights. And so politics can establish justice in a sinful world. But why the sad duty of politics? Because you can establish justice, or at least you think you have established justice, and yet the sinful world will show its ugly face again and again and again. So you keep on trying, but don't be so optimistic, because, well, we have to be vigilant, we have to be careful, we have to trust and not trust others. We have to be knowledgeable and skilled in our assessments of the world. And well, this is the reality of world of today. I'll go back to the definition which I skipped at the beginning. Realism is an approach to international relations that focuses on security and state interests. Security, safety is above all. This is most important that we need to have in our life. As individuals, we protect our bodies, our homes, our loved ones, security. Same thing is the most important thing for the states. And also interest. We do have interests. We need to get food, we need to get shelter, we need to get jobs, we need to, in a way, entertain ourselves from time to time. So the same logic, of course, you use your imagination, but the same logic should apply to the world of politics. Security and interests. Security and interests. So going back to the statement by Newberg and move forward. I also use an analogy which many of you can refer to easily, and so you have seen the film. Some of you have read the novel. It's a sci-fi. It's not realistic. It's sci-fi fiction. It's fiction, but this is a quite well-known author, British author William Golding, who wrote Lord of the Flies. And so just to remind you about this movie, the plot of this movie, bunch of kids, essentially kids, pre-teens or just in early teens, they sing in the choir. After plane crash, they ended up in a deserted island, no parents, no adults around them. There is something is going on in the world, the conflict, and well, they have to survive together. And instead of building a community, building a shelter, gathering and hunting together just to get food, fishing to get food, instead of doing that, they began to fight. They got separated into cliques, into gangs. They begin to compete for resources, for power, and domination, just submission. So essentially, they start violent acts against one another. Somebody died there, and if you remember, one of the final scenes, that's when the toughest of those young boys just finally exhausted and losing control of everything. Just finally, he realized, well, the pilot came to save them. He began to cry. So he began to cry. Just finally, the sense of hopelessness was relieved. And what does realism have to do with the Lord of the Flies? Like people, states, countries tend to plunge into violent lawlessness when they don't recognize and establish authority. Many theorists and politicians hold out the same vision of human behavior, and they apply that vision to behavior of countries. So it must be established authority. It must be somebody nearby or there in the distance who has this authority. Countries pursue self-interest and tend to join forces against one another. Without an effective power to establish order, the world turns to violence. But if power is used judiciously and responsibly, as supporters of realism argue, the world may remain stable and the cruelty of unruly mobs will be avoided. Of course, this is my understanding. It's just not something which is established truth for realism, but I think it's my vision of realism, and I try to explain those boring theoretical things in a simple way, and this is how I explain to myself. I believe this is a message sent by this novel somehow reflects the nature of realism as a point of view of international politics. And I will explain this in more formal terms. I call it the logic of realism. So anarchy is a natural state of affairs among states. Don't think that anarchy is everybody is against everybody, and everybody is looting and crushing things, and if everybody is violent. Not necessarily, and just not necessarily what anarchy means in the theory of international relations. Anarchy is the absence of authority above you. In other words, you as a state exist, there are other states, but there's no one above you, but it's a natural state of affairs among states. And remember the concept of sovereignty we studied early. So there is no other authority above a sovereign state. A big one, huge one, powerful one, like a China or United States, or a small one, like Luxembourg. You say, well, Professor, well, how about European Union? How about UN? Yes and no. This is a subject for further discussions, but essentially no one can tell people Luxembourg what to do unless they don't want it. They vote for or against it, but this is ultimately their decision or decision of their government. So anarchy is a natural state of affairs among states. However, trying to avoid war against everyone or survive instead of anarchy, states supposed to act in self-interest and to maximize their power. If you're a huge state, you maximize your power. A small state somehow do everything to gain more power or at least secure power. How? Through others, connections, ties, obligations, bargaining. But you maximize your power. Then you understand that there are other states who are trying to gain as much power as they can. So you try to balance the power so no one is getting too strong and nobody's bullying the too weak states in theory. So you use diplomacy, build alliances and coalitions. Some students make mistake. I don't think this is a deliberate mistake, but just simply maybe just a rush to judgment. They say, oh, realism is about war and power and weapons. No. Any concept of international politics is essentially about war and use of weapons, but in which way, how, under what conditions? Realism is not advocating war against everybody or war of powerful against less powerful. It tries to discourage countries to fight. But realism considers war as a natural state of affairs, unfortunately, but this is reality. Remember early statement. So this is a sinful world. We live in a sinful world. Violence is inevitable. We have to reduce it. How? This is the realism's logic. So diplomacy, alliances, coalitions, yes, and could be war. So well, the national order is established, and within this national order, so structure, the grid. So imagine just the globe and the countries and the connections. Just use your imagination. So then in this grid, there is a system or systems are established and they interact, and states search for their security within the system. I'll give you examples now, of course. So a few more comments about definitions, but they also will involve examples. Realism is very skeptical about something which doesn't resemble a state. So coalitions, fine, maybe, but there are coalitions of states. Sovereign countries are the key players in this world. And the key players supposed to be studied, and this is what they in fact study. Those key players have their state interests. They may refer to economic issues, political, it's about power. They refer to resources and labor force and trade and commerce, defense. So countries that have natural borders that protect them. U.S., for example, Canada, so oceans protect from conquest from Europe. But look at the smaller countries and the history of invasion. Just one knows just history of Poland, Belgium. It's a relatively flat territory, especially north of those countries. And yes, just how many invasions has Poland suffered from? There's dozens and dozens and dozens in history. So there's different interests of a country in terms of protecting its border compared to, say, US or some other well-protected countries by natural borders. Joseph Stalin is a former leader of the Soviet Union, communist leader in 20th century. He died in 1953 and he ruled the country for several decades. Once said, when he was mentioned about how powerful the Vatican, it's a seat of a Catholic Church, its power there, he asked a famous question: how many military divisions does the Pope have? And Stalin was not facetious. He was not just mocking, because he really believed in the power of armed forces. And it's just a picture on the screen. You see it's tanks. It's I think picture from 1970s, or 80s. They show the powerful powerful tank, and you see the Swiss Guard, historic protectors of Vatican. The message of Stalin here is this: that's if you care about power, if you care about the country, you have to defend it, and their ideas, there are values. I think what he meant, the power to persuade, but these are not that essential compared to power of your army, air force, navy, marines, and other branches of the military. Power has many well, embodiments or kinds, according to realist tradition. It's not only just weapons. It's yes, true, it's a military strength, but it's also about location. I told you about well-protected countries and countries not well protected. It's about economic resources. It's iron, oil, forestry. It's other resources. It's about population size. You can imagine bigger countries have more people, have more human resources. Economic might, factories and infrastructure and what they can produce and eventually trade. In financial strength, that's the small countries, that's again enormous power because of the financial strength, the money they have access to. National solidarity is an important factor. Realism is usually dismissive. You probably feel it. They're dismissive toward ideas of non-material nature. So it's ideology, ideas, friendship, historically, traditionally. However, more and more of realists believe that there's certain factors that such as national solidarity, that glue people together. It is easier to organize defense of your country if people are behind your leader. It is more difficult to charge them into battle if they are not trusting their government, if they simply fight against one another within a country. So it's important fact. Effective diplomacy. Realism is investing a lot in successful diplomacy. To do what? To make coalitions, to outsmart your enemies and adversaries, avoid war. And also symbols. Also important. Symbols. What kind of symbols? Something that can unify a nation. Something can scare the nation. So therefore, plenty of examples when the governments deliberately just build the image of the enemy, just sending message to the people. So we are surrounded by enemies. Everybody is plotting against us. We are a small but proud nation. We have to fight. It is easy to distract people from domestic concerns, easy to distract them from their concern about their rights within the country. It's simpler to mobilize them to fight against foreign enemies, real or imaginary. So symbols do matter, just to make people more enthusiastic about something or more scared about something. So, and there are many other embodiments of power, but this is a list which I recommend. So once again, realism is not only about military power. They understand there's plenty of other resources countries can have to defend their interest. One of the most substantial elements of power in the 20th century was and still is in 21st century nuclear weapons. Just a brief estimate. I use source from Washington Post. And this is, again, estimates of nuclear warheads that countries have. And so one nuclear warhead counted here is powerful enough to destroy a large city and not only destroy but kill instantly the population of those cities and so miles and miles around them. So essentially just as deadly weapons. But see, Russia and the United States have close to 7,000 warheads each, and see the countries also: France, China, Britain, Pakistan, India. Israel officially has not announced about the possession of nuclear weapons, but de facto most experts believe Israel has it, and just basically we show how many nuclear warheads they have. We will study nuclear security in a lecture when we study international security.